We welcome you to George Washington's boyhood home at Ferry Farm. We're on the banks of the Rappahannock just east of Fredericksburg City. In 1738, when Augustine and Mary Ball Washington moved the family to what is Ferry Farm today, young George is 6 years old, and the family lives here for a number of years until, unfortunately, Augustine's death when George was only 11 years old. So it is with Augustine's death that George becomes the oldest male in the house. And during the ensuing years, we see young George grow into manhood on this site. He's here at Ferry Farm and off and on until he's 22 years old. We have been excavating the Washington home and the site of what we expect to be the dependencies. In fact, I should tell you that there have been 700,000 artifacts uncovered at this site, and many of those relate to the Washington family. The good news for us is, though, that this site yields up for us, among those 700,000 artifacts, pieces that give us exciting information for the first time on the early life of Washington. We all know very well the remaining chapters of his life. We don't know enough about what happened to the boy before legend, and that story is emerging here.
Here at Ferry Farm, we've been doing archaeological excavations since 2001. In the late 1990s, this landscape was slated to become a strip mall, and local citizens, knowing that this was the boyhood home of George Washington, worked hard to save and preserve this landscape. Now, while it was known that George Washington's boyhood home existed here, exactly where it was located on the landscape was not known. And in 2008, excavations revealed the precise location of that home and its dimensions. The George Washington Foundation hopes to recreate the entire landscape as it existed in the 1740s when the Washington family lived here. Well, we're located in the archaeology laboratory of the George Washington Foundation, and it's located in the visitor center. Now, the artifacts we excavate in the field come in here to be processed. Here they're washed, labeled, cataloged into a database, and analyzed. Some of the studies we've been doing include an analysis of some glue that our staff have identified on the ceramics that Mary Washington owned. She would have been able to demonstrate what a sophisticated family that they were by having these beautiful ceramics made in England. This was important in the years following Augustine's death, when the family's economic situation was a little stressful, given that his two older sons from his first marriage inherited the bulk of the family's property. Next, we're going to go into the Small Finds Laboratory, where I've pulled some artifacts that the Washingtons used in their home on a day-to-day basis. I wanted to start with some teaspoons. These elegant teaspoons would have been used by the Washingtons to take tea, and the tea ceremony was a very important part of their social activities. Knowing how to serve tea, the proper etiquette for communicating when you've had enough tea, these tools and these rules were important for all the Washingtons to know. George Washington marries Martha Dandridge Custis, and it's his familiarity with these rules of etiquette that in part helped to make him such an attractive spouse. Forks are still pretty innovative in the early 1700s when some of these were used. Knowing how to use forks, spoons, and knives appropriately to consume food was part of their training that the Washington parents would have instilled in their children. The glass fragments you see are the remains of medicinal vials. And we know when George went to Barbados with his older brother Lawrence in 1752 that he contracted smallpox. Surviving documents indicate that when George returned to Ferry Farm in 1752, his mother Mary on 2 occasions purchased medicine for George's smallpox wounds. It's part of the story here of her mothering of her children. Now, before he was the father of our country, he was a young boy, and we've recovered several marbles from the home. Some of these are made from limestone and some are made from clay. As one of the unique stories we have here at Ferry Farm are the remains of George's childhood toys. There are very few toys that survive in the archaeological record, and marbles are one of the more reliable ones. This bone hairbrush is one of the earliest manufactured. Prior to this time, hairstyles in Europe used bone combs. This would have been used to brush natural hair, not wig hair. The wig hair curlers, of which Ferry Farm's recovered about 170 to date, is very unusual for a home site. Wearing wigs was an emblem of British male gentility. With 4 boys on site, each owning 1 to 2 wigs, there would have been a lot of maintenance to keep those curls in good shape. Ideally, you'd want to do that maintenance weekly. And in the excavations we're doing in the yard now, these curlers are concentrated there. Mount Vernon, in their extensive and excellent archaeological investigations, have recovered 2 wig hair curlers compared to our 170. Ferry Farm is very unusual, and we're researching carefully to understand why that would be. We know George paid for his own fencing lessons. One of the artifacts we recovered last year includes this copper alloy fragment from a sword's hand guard. So it's broken, but the pommel, if I'm holding the pommel, this would have been part of the hand guard that would have surrounded the hand of the person wielding this weapon. This dates from the mid-1700s, and our colleagues at Colonial Williamsburg are very excited by this find. These artifacts that show the Washingtons' desire to remain sophisticated and communicate their membership in that gentry class despite some economic stress, says very clearly to some folks who have suggested that Mary Washington was austere, that she didn't do a good job of raising these children. These artifacts unequivocally indicate that she equipped her home with the tools they needed to become successful members of society. And it's during this time that Virginia society is shifting from being loyal British subjects, and that's reflected in this material culture, in these artifacts, to American citizens. And that happens as the 1700s go on, and increasingly colonists have issues with the policies of King George. When you visit Ferry Farm, you can see these artifacts in person. You can walk the landscape George walked on, and you can begin to understand and to ask questions about how colonists went from subjects to American citizens.